So this is the original. When I moved here in 1949, my father was the station master, and he was here till 1963. And I was 5 years old when I came here, and I remember the station house very much. And you came down the ramp to the slope to the house, and then through here. There was no gate here at all, and we had four-wheel barrows, and they were all backed in here, and that was a fence right along, and there were no steps, no ramp. The only way out of that way was round the corner and up steps, so that was no way for the public to go, and they never did, and they always came this way. And the booking hall entrance was there, with an alternative entrance there. And there's this door to the station master's office, which was very rarely used in the hall itself. So this was the area of activity where the parcels were all dealt with, and the gateway up here was much narrower, and you can see it on a poster which is up yonder. And there were solid timber posts in there. Very narrow, and a four-wheel barrow went through with that much to spare on either side. And I was the only person that could ride a four-wheeler barrow down that ramp from the top, down with it in a control from the front. And I never hit it head on. If I had, I'd have gone over the handlebars, you might have said, but I never did. I scraped the side and came to a sudden stop, but I never fell off. And yeah, nobody else could do it. That was just great. So we're going along now to the lamp room, the oil store, where all these signals in Haltwhistle were all oil, paraffin. So you had a lamp that lasted for 8 days, and you changed it every 7 days. And what I had to do was to clean the glasses, to clean the glass in the lamp, to trim the wick, and to fill it with oil. And the porters would go up the lamp, would go up the signal posts. I wasn't allowed to go up the signal posts to the top. And George Kipling, whose photograph we have, and we'll show a still of it, George Kipling was a porter here, and he was very proud of the fact that he arrived on the same day as my father in 1949 to work here. And he went up the Alston branch one day to replace the signal lamp, which was on the fixed distance. You had to tell the driver coming down the branch where Haltwhistle was, and the fixed distance, it never moved, but it had to be lit. So when it was dark, you could see he was approaching Haltwhistle. And George went up this afternoon to change the lamp. And when he was coming back, a light engine coming down, which he wasn't expecting, he never heard it, and it clipped him, and it rolled him down the embankment, and poor George got himself up, and the driver had stopped, and he came back, and he picked George up, and they got on the engine and brought him back here. And then later on in the afternoon, Father found out that there'd been a slight accident up the Alston branch. So he said to George, "Come into my office." And George went into his office. He said, "What's gone on this morning then, George, or afternoon, whatever it was?" And George said, "Well, I didn't know that engine was coming, and it knocked me down." And he said, "That was carelessness, wasn't it?" He said, "No, Mr. Bowron." He said, "It was your fault." And Father said, "Oh, indeed, was it my fault, George?" He said, "Yes." He said, "If you hadn't allowed me to swap shifts, that would never have happened." And Father said, "That's fair enough." He said, "Never asked me to allow you to swap shifts again, George." And he never did. George never swapped shifts again. No. What a stupid thing to say, eh? But the oil house, that's where we used to do the work and of filling the lamps and trimming them and cleaning the glass and so on. And David says that building now just stinks of paraffin. There's paraffin spilled all over. There's sand spread around the floor. But if ever anybody put a match to it, it would have gone up like hell. And we used to play cricket in the drying green, and Raymond was playing cricket one day in there with Wilfie Brown. Will crop up. The name Wilfie Brown will crop up later. But Wilfie Brown hit the ball and hit Raymond right in the Adam's apple, didn't he? You went down like a light, didn't you? Yeah. But the balls invariably went through the windows of the oil house. So Father would get in touch with the glaziers department in Newcastle and send your glazier out to replace the windows. So the windows are all the same, but he measured every one. And then he went back to Newcastle and he cut the glass And do you know, when he saw the glass being stored, it had velvet, you know, the green baize, you know, velvet. And anyway, he brought the windows out the next day, fitted them, and then by the end of the day or whatever, Father would say to him, well, here's a packet of fags, lad, that'll do, eh? And it's all squared up. So we got all the windows replaced, and nobody ever knew anything about it. Yeah, that's how business was done in those days. So the platform extends a lot further than the fence that goes across. And the Haltwhistle East signal box was way down the line, further on, and that led you into an exchange siding for a colliery, and also the pipeworks had a narrow gauge railway went from it. And then in here there were two sidings. There was the platform, which is just there, and you can see the platform edge going right away along, and there's another siding on the other side. And when I was all of 8, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and to get out of the house was an art in itself, without Father hearing me. And I used to come along to help clean the coaches, and they're all non-corridor. So you had maybe 20 doors on the coach each side, and you had to I opened all the doors, 4 coaches, 80 doors, and then the porter would put the box on the step and sweep into the box, and then I would go along and close all the doors again. And then the train would depart at 6:12, and then another engine arrived from Hexham, steam engine, went on and took the other train of stock out, and then back into the platform, and we did exactly the same thing. So the stock was cleaned in the morning. And the Alston branch we'll go to shortly, but over on the other side, the Gem Cinema was up there. The cinema, but it was called the Gem Cinema, and it was where the front of it was where that car is. And the manageress there, she wanted to entertain the troops during the war. There were German prisoners of war in Featherstone Prison of War camp, and she used to go up to Featherstone Park, into the river, and swim in the nude for all the German prisoners. And that was her war effort. I don't know what she was doing, but she did it. And there's a chap on the previous tour, he said about Susanna's sweet shop and so on. But Mr. Gibson, who lived up there, he worked on the permanent way, and the King during the war had to come on the royal train, and he was put up the Alston branch for secrecy and during the night, and he was up there. And Mr. Gibson's job was to get the potty and put it underneath the train and catch the King's business. And he was very proud of this. You know, I would be very proud too. But anyway, that was his claim to fame. And then we go back to the toilets now, and they are treating themselves now. So we've got the entrance to the toilets has all been bricked up, but we had a ladies and gentlemen's toilet, and they had slot machines on, and you used to be a penny in the slot and you could get into the toilet. Well, after a fortnight or so, you might have 3 and 6pence or whatever it was in altogether. But 2 clerks, you had to have 2 clerks to come and empty them in case you stole any of the money. And this was Fort Knox stuff, you know. And so 2 clerks came and emptied the slot machines and banked it through the booking office. But we're going now to the waiting room. Right, so this was part of the waiting room, but it's got a wall dividing it. So where did the wall come from? And the wall was put up in about 1950 something, because the undergraduates of Newcastle University who were studying engineering used to come out here in the summer vacation to tell the railway company how they could get around Haltwhistle Tunnel by rail and all in the engineering work that was involved. And Haltwhistle Tunnel's there to this day, costing a fantastic amount of money to maintain it. And on top of it, is Winchester Hall or Winchester House. I don't know. But if you saw the house from the far side of the tunnel, the far end, it's a beautiful building. It really is. Got round roofs and all sorts. Here we have the edge of the Alston platform, right away around, right to the top. And the line actually went very near to the signal box. And the signalman used to come down the stairs to the platform at the bottom and exchange the tablets with the driver. And my father ran a cremation service, and he had a cat, for instance, that died. So over he comes with it to the locomotive and into the firebox. The cat goes. And somebody had a dog died in the village. Same again. Cremation service, you see, free of charge. And the next thing you would see was the fireman would have his breakfast on the shovel. You know, his bacon and eggs and all the rest of it. But yeah, this is life on the Ulster line. So anyway, the horse and cart. Dick Kennedy delivered his coal, coke and bacon fuel on the horse and cart. And when Dick died, we had to convert to a lorry. But they were weighed on here. And the clerk from the goods office used to come up here and weigh the vehicles. And you imagine a weighbridge here. So we're going to go to the porter's room now, and I'll tell you about the porter's room. We're getting out of the cold, and it's quite warm in there as well as it happens now. In here, the entrance was there, and that's where the porters came, the lorry drivers came, anybody that was of a manual sort. But I used to sneak in, and Wilfie Brown, whose photograph you'll see, was the foreman. And he used to eat in here, along with the others. And we had railway lorries here, and they had obviously railway drivers. And there was to drive a railway lorry, you had to be passed by the inspector. And if the inspector passed you, you were okay. If you came from driving a lorry on the road from an outside company, you had to be examined by the railway examiner. But if you were passed by the railway examiner, you could go and drive a road vehicle outside. The railway ran the roads, as far as that was concerned. Anyway, a new lorry driver arrived in Haltwhistle and lodged with Wilfie Brown, the foreman. And then we were all eating in here, you see, and then one day Wilfie realised that the lorry driver was getting a bigger bait than he was getting. Now this didn't bode well. So before we knew where we were, now Wilfie was the womaniser. He really was. He was in Dunkirk, and he was a you'll see his photograph, he's a very good looking man. And he was the womaniser, and he, the lorry driver, ran off with his wife, and he was never seen again. And that was Wilfie. Yeah, but it came to the crunch. But wow, we never forgot that. Poor Wilfie lost his wife. There we are. Down here was the horse trough. This is where the horses were all put to water. And it was concrete. And of course it's gone. Don't know where. But the water was all pumped up into the tank. And then it was gravity fed to the station. So the water cranes for the steam locomotives at both ends of the station, they were fed from here. And it holds a lot of water, that tank, but it's all gravity, and that pushed it out into the steam locomotive tenders. But yeah, and that isn't an original chimney part. That's new stone, that. But the pipe may well be from the chimney. And because the fire was in there, there's a fire directly below that, and a good old railway fire. But it's a beautiful tank, and it's settled. They put a house inside the tank, settle station. It was on television. They've got and we're going there for a weekend shortly. But there's a tank, and this building arrived by road, and into the tank it went, and they've made a lovely house of it. Yeah, but down here, I'll show you where I learned to drive. The siding here, we used to have the coal and coke delivered here and at Greenhead. But here, in '63, the winter was very bad and the snow might have been that deep, probably a lot more actually. But the pickup train was delivering the coal and he was backing in here and you could see the wagons coming, and all of a sudden they weren't coming here, they were going over there. So the guard stopped the train coming in and he said to me, "You get that wagon emptied, lad, and I'll be back tomorrow." And he came back the next day, and that truck, when it had come off with the snow, it had frozen hard and it was just like rails. And when he came back the next day, he had 2 empty wagons and he pushed them in, coupled up, and he just pulled that wagon back, which was now empty, back on. And that was a railwoman, a practical railwoman who knew what he was doing. And that wagon was re-railed and no paperwork, no nothing, and job done. And I thought, great, you learnt a lot. But yeah, and the cattle dock was where the wall is. And there was a chap on the previous tour saying he remembers Haltwhistle and the mart days and all the cattle being driven through Haltwhistle, and then everybody went for the tea to the Presbyterian church just up the road, and they got a marvellous afternoon tea. They had daffodil teas and had these days on mart day teas. But I remember there was one day one of the beasts got down onto the buffers, and you imagine a cow on the buffers between 2 vehicles, and the men had to get the ropes underneath, and they got 2 or 3 men on each wagon end, and they hauled this animal up and then got it onto the cattle dock. And I remember Father said, that was some shift, was that, but I don't know whether the beast lived or died, but I've no doubt the vet had to come and look after it. But yeah, they were busy days, and they used to, I've got photographs of the trains being assembled for going to Carlisle, going to Newcastle, and all cattle all over the country, and that's how they were transported. Right. You may wonder why I'm here, but out of here there was a metal ring which came right round there like a loop, solid metal, and you still see the ends, they were just cut off, and that's where when you parked your horse, you tied the harness to the. This is the garden of the station house. A rented property, obviously, and the garden went right up to the railway hotel, and at the top was a garage, a tin garage, and the bus company had the garage, and they stored the coaches, the buses in there for the winter, and there were at least 4 buses in this green metal garage up at the top, and the fitter used to come out in the spring and get them all started up, and they were back into service for the summer and then back in here for the winter again. And then on the other side of the fence down there was the orchard, and then this was the drying green. And the drying green was where, some people didn't know what a drying green was, it's where my mother washed the clothes in here and then hung them out to dry on the drying green. And inside here we've got the fire and the boiler, as it was when my mother on a Monday used to boil the clothes. And there was a chimney up to the end there, and David says he knows that the chimney was there, and that's where my mother did the washing and dried down there. Somebody's removed the stonework here. That was a solid wall, and in front of it there was a barrel, a water butt, and the water used to come out of there down here, and that's where we drowned the rats in the cage. Just put them in there, and that sorted them out. And the netty, does anybody know what a netty is?
No.
Right, the netty, the toilet, the outside toilet. So that's the netty, is the first door, and then when you Father, it's going back to the signal lamps again. When Father had the signal lamp, he used to put one in there, and every winter, and it just used to go next to the pipe, and the pipe never froze, just that little flame. And next door is the coal bunker. And now, you remember when you used to go to the river and you used to get tiddlers, the tiny little fish? Well, I used to do that, and I brought them back and got them into a goldfish bowl. And one day, this is the scullery here, I'm changing the water, and I tipped the goldfish bowl upside down, and the fish went into the sink, blew me down, I hadn't put the plug in, and they were off, away down the pipe. So I dashed into the kitchen, next door, got a butterfly net, shut out the door, and caught them, and I caught them all coming out of the drain pipe. I got them all back, never lost one. But yeah, so we're going now into the house, we're going to get warm. So, as I say, we moved in here in '49, and the heating was of a very low calibre altogether. And this was an open fire, and in about 1951, Father came down the stairs and in, and I'm sitting absolutely perishing. And Father said, that's it. And he said, we're going to get a Rayburn stove in here, and each of the other 2 rooms will get an enclosed fire. So we've got a Rayburn stove in here, and it was marvellous. Mother could make drop scones, you know, just by pouring the liquid onto the top of the Rayburn, and there was your drop scones. And she loved the Rayburn, and it was good. And there was a table here, and I'm sat here on one side after dinner one evening. Father sat there, and I never sat with him because we had nothing in common at all. And I'm sat there, and all of a sudden there was a brick came flying through the window, just missed me. And Father looked like a shot, and out there, out gone. And it was a tramp, and he'd been in jail, and just wanted to go back to jail. He had to do something to get himself back into jail. They put the stone through the window. Father didn't play ball with him. He said, right, I understand. Got the police, and he was away back to down in jail. And he was quite happy. That's where he wanted to be. But you're in the pantry, right? So, when I was going to school at the Greg School, we used to smoke. And to get the money to buy the cigarettes, I had to use my dinner money. So I used to get a jar of marmalade out of there and some butter, and I used to buy the roads in Carlisle. And we went to a tobacconist at the top of Botchergate, and she used to split a packet of 20 open for us. We used to pay 2pence each for a cigarette. And all the boys used to smoke coming home. And that's how I got my money. And we'll talk about smoking in a little while, but that's where I got my money from the dinner money. But it was a great place to live, I'll tell you. This is where the hams all hung from, the hooks. And the hams used to hang there, and the passengers used to be coming down here, and they used to look up at the hams. And of course, not long after the war, you know, hams, yeah. But it was a great sight to see them all hanging there. And that was after they came out of the wash house, yeah. But it's important. They're lovely rooms. They're so high. And it's great. In 1835 or thereabouts, you know, and they knew how to build. Yeah, really did. But we're in the lounge now. Now there was a doorway here into Father's workshop, and the hole in the wall there didn't exist. And there was a door out here to the platform. And Father had a lathe in here, and he used to make model locomotives. But he only got so far, because when he got to the boiler stage, the boiler was too much for him to manage, and he never managed that. So we made about 6 locomotive starts, but we never actually completed one. But he was quite happy. And I don't know whether anybody knows about Darkeline. Do you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Darkeline? No. Well, you didn't have fitted carpets. You had a square of carpet, right? And all the woodwork all round about was darkelined. So you had a dark coloured floor with a carpet in the middle. And Father, at the time that he had the Rayburn put in 2 enclosed fires, one in here, one next door. And do you know this house? It got really warm when these fires were put in, but they were taken out. All these fires were all taken out years later. Why? I have no idea, because there's no central heating, there was no knout. So, anyway, Father used to come in here after lunch, and he would sit in the chair, and he would go to sleep, and he would be asleep for 20 minutes, half an hour. And that was Father, and because he would work in the evening, typing away. But there was one day, he sat here now, just that high, and then I came, and here's the glass coach arrives on the platform. the district officers had arrived and they went into the platform. And I'm standing here and you did not wake father, right? And I didn't know what to do. I thought, the glass coach is there, the district officers are going to be getting off and father's asleep. I'll have to wake him, so I woke him up. And I said, the glass coach is driving the platform. He said, don't sit on information like that, boy. And he shot out of the door, got his cap on, and away around he went. And good afternoon, Mr. Johnson, etc. And mother would have them all in for afternoon tea. So in they came, and of course she was always dressed in a fine, because looked lovely. And she would give them afternoon tea. And so here's me with my train set on the floor, and all these railway officers arrived, and they said after a while, Harold, the signal's in the wrong place there, and they would move it. And they reassembled all my model railway, and I did not like it one little bit. And anyway, well, as soon as it'd gone, I changed it back around again, and I had it my way. But yeah, that was the visit of the. And that happened, you know, several times that the district officers would come. And you know, they had a crate of beer on the glass coach. A crate of beer. Today, if you had a crate of beer, you'd be down the road, you really would. But they all drank on duty. And they thought the staff shouldn't, but they could. Terrible example to make. You know, when I was in Edinburgh, I used to sack them for that. And we tipped a train over one night, or a sleeper train over to Morpeth, with our driver. He had pop. And yeah, nobody was killed. A broken ankle was the worst injury. We were lucky. But yeah, that was some night. Yeah, that's not good. That's mine. I think that in my days, your father went for an enclosed fire in here as well, because it was an open fire, but it was a wooden mantelpiece and whatnot. But this was the dining room, so we had, I don't know, you remember it really, not 3-piece suite. Yeah.
There's a big table in the middle here.
The table down there, that's right.
And you could get about
eight people around, that's right. And you had a settee down here and 2 chairs, that's right.
I remember there was a chair in that corner.
That's right, absolutely, yeah. Next door was when Father got the television. Father said, I'm not having a television in this house. And in 1960, and somebody saw an aerial going up outside, and they said, oh, you have any television, Mr. Bowron? Shut up. That was in the room next door. And he used to watch, on a Saturday afternoon, he used to watch the wrestling. And he loved the wrestling. And that was all he wanted to watch, really. But anyway, in here, I remember that my father was not well thought of by his in-laws. But when he came to the crunch, he took in his wife's mother and his wife's mother's mother, and they were here to die, and that they did. And I remember when my grandmother died, they retained them at home until they were buried, and she was in here, and the shutters were shut, and my mother said to me, now Harold, you must not go in the dining room. So of course, as soon as they were out of the way, I was straight into the dining room. It was pitch black in here, and I got as far as about here, and I didn't go any further. I wanted to see a dead person, but on my own and whatnot, didn't quite work. So anyway, I withdrew and went elsewhere. But yeah, that was as far as I got, near as I got to my grandmother. Right. Anyway, there was an engraving on this window. I forget what it was now, but David had it, and I forget what it was. There was some markings on here.
I thought it was the Hexham station.
Eh? Hexham had
Was that Hexham station?
Mr. Sword. Sword?
But that's where the engraving was.
Yes, but there was also something on this window here. Anyway, the window's gone now. But Father's office was down there, and we could see in and see him typing in his office straight across. And yeah, it's just as it was. But you see the stairs. Now the stairs were a problem because I had to get out at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and clean those coaches, you remember. The job was to get down the stairs without Father hearing. And some of these stairs creaked. And I used to have to work out which ones creaked. And I never got it right. And I always stood on a stair, or nearly always, that creaked. And of course, as soon as you heard, get back to bed, boy. And of course, but 20 minutes later, I got out. This was Mother and Father's bedroom. And I remember I was here not too long ago when the wallpaper was still on the wall, and that was the original wallpaper. And you know, when the station master moved into a new house, a new venue, they were given, they could wallpaper the whole house and decorate it. But you could only go up to a certain level for wallpaper. So I can't remember what it was, say 10 and sixpence a roll. But if you went above that, you had to pay for it yourself, the extra. And do you know, there's some beautiful wallpaper on here, and David's got it stripped off. And some of the wallpaper was a lovely paper in this room. And yeah, I came back, and you know, that was put on in 49, and I came back just a year ago maybe, and it was still on the wall. And yeah, this is a lovely room, and it's much bigger than it is now because we've got a shower room in there now, and whoever put the shower in and whatnot did a brilliant job because it's beautiful in there. It really is. And what a lovely room. You know, the height of this, either work involved, fantastic. No central heating in my day. Yeah. There used to be a double bed here, where you're standing, double bed there, and a dressing table here, and it was a spare room, and you had a lovely view, and I used to come in here and get my mother's lipstick, and I used to crawl underneath the bed, and I used to draw on the wall underneath the bed with the lipstick, and my mother used to go mad. Who's been doing this with my lipstick? And of course, when she moved the bed, then it was all exposed, my handiwork. But there you are. Right, moving on again. So this was the boys' bedroom. The mother was very proud of her boys, and my brother used to sleep in there, and I used to sleep there. And I don't know whether you remember crystal sets. Anybody old enough to remember a crystal set? Well, a crystal set, you had this little box, and you had a crystal, and it was set in, and you used to fasten hold the crystal, and you had a cat's whisker, and the cat's whisker touched the crystal, and you could get Radio Luxembourg. And you had earphones, and I used to lie in bed listening to Radio Luxembourg, particularly on a Sunday night because it was the top 20, and that's when you found out which was the top record. And I'm lying there with my headphones on, and of course I'm in bed, and I fall asleep, and I roll over. And my mother used to come and say, "Harold, for heaven's sake, you'll strangle yourself." And the wire was right round my neck. How I didn't have no idea. But the father would deliver the Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. And it was just another job for him. And he delivered the Christmas presents, put them down. And then when mother started to deliver them, and it was late at night and we were supposed to be asleep, I used to jump up off the bed and give her the fright of my life. But this was the smoking room. Now nobody entered here apart from me. This was my den. And there were steps down just like there are now, but I think it goes down further than it did. But the window opened, you see the window slides open, and that's where I used to smoke, and it was my booking office, and all sorts of things went on in there. Yeah, it was lovely. But I used to smoke in there, and then the fag ends used to go down out of the window onto the platform. Well, Wilfie Brown, we've heard about Wilfie Brown, the foreman. He's coming on. I used to smoke with Wilfie and all the staff without father knowing in the booking office. And father comes to the door from his workshop, and he said, "Wilfie," he says, "where have all these tab ends come from?" "Oh, I don't know, Mr. Bowron." And he said, "Well, get them swept up there." So Wilfie had to sweep them up. But there was me dropping them out, and poor Wilfie had to sweep them up. But they never spotted the smoke coming out the window, nothing. And I got away with it for years. Well, I got away with it forever. But I remember coming down the street of Haltwhistle one night in the winter, and father, he was a really stern guy, and he said, I'm walking along in the winter at Beachville, and so I'm coming along, and he said, "What have you got in your hand, boy?" And I said, "Nothing." He said, "Your other one?" Clonk. So I went to we used to have football matches 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, you know, the town, Haltwhistle was versus somebody, and they used to have a raffle. And I went to the football match to watch, and at half time you could buy a raffle ticket. So you paid for a raffle ticket, and the prize was 50 cigarettes. And I was 11 years old, right? And they gave me the cigarettes because I'd won. Can you imagine? They gave me the cigarettes. So I come down this proudest punch to the station master's office because it was a Saturday afternoon, and he said, I said, I've won 50 cigarettes. He said, where did you win those? And I said, at the raffle at the hotel. He said, plonk. He said, I told you never to buy a raffle ticket, boy. He smoked them. No problem. So there we are. Now you had to be really chronically ill before the fire was put on. But I remember it was put on once, but I wasn't chronically ill. But I don't know how we got the fire on. But yeah, it see that's new. You put that in. Yeah.
No.
Was that original?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it
Was
really?
it paint?
There was a lot of paint on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was painted. Did you get the paint off? Well done, you.
Did a great job.
Hey. Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know how you did that.
Very interested.
Yeah. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the staff had to know that it was 10 o'clock. Because, don't forget, before the railway was invented, there were 4 time zones in Britain. So if you went from London to Penzance, you went through a 4-minute difference. Anyway, at 10 o'clock, the staff had to know it was 10 o'clock. So the telegraph instrument, which was right behind you there, the girls in the telegraph girls stopped sending any messages at about 1 to 10, and when it was 10 o'clock, the needle waggled like that. But the Ulster branch didn't have any telegraph, so they had to know when it was 10 o'clock as well. So I used to stand at the telephone, and it was an internal system, and you used to press the buzzer, and it used to be a long too short would be Lamley or whatever it was. And 10 o'clock, you used to press like Billy O, and it told them up the branch it was 10 o'clock. And that's how you got word. So I got a telegram one day, because I started at Haydenbridge in August the 31st, 1959, started at Haydenbridge, and after 6 months, I was transferred to Brampton in my permanent position. But after so many months at Brampton, they wanted a clerk at Haltwhistle. So I was sent a telegram to say, report on Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning, early turn, booking office, Haltwhistle. And I lived 10 yards away. So I had to make it across the way for 6 o'clock. So that would suit me down to the ground. Well, at the same time as I got the telegram at Brampton, Father got the telegram here saying, H.J. Bowron reporting for duty 6 o'clock Monday morning. So Father got the telegram and he picks up the phone. Now it had to be absolutely critical if you picked the phone up and spoke to Newcastle, because you had to record that telephone call, it had to record the duration, and if it was a member of the public was wanting to use the phone, it was you charged them as well according to that. So Father got the message, and he picked up the phone and he said that to the staff office in Newcastle, that boy is not coming here. Clonk went the phone. So I got a message to say, don't go to Haltwhistle on Monday. So this happened 3 times. And on the third occasion, Father gets the message that Harold's coming to Haltwhistle. So he picks up the phone, and when he finished saying he wasn't having him, the clerk at the other said, Mr. Bowron, if you're not having Harold at Haltwhistle on Monday, you've got to come in and see the chief staff clerk. Let the boy come. So he plugs the phone down. So on the Monday morning, in here at 6 o'clock, and Father strolls in at 9 o'clock, and to the station master's office, which was right through there, and he's standing there, and he said, into my office, boy, and because in I goes, and he said, shut the door. So I shut the door, and he said, now, on Friday, he said, you'll be paying me, and he said, what you write on the outside of that envelope is not the amount of money I give your mother. And he said, I don't want you telling her how much I earn. And as Kathleen says, you know, it wasn't good for the son to be working for the father, really. But anyway, he was a blooming stern guy, but he was very fair. Now, Mr. Edmondson, the ticket dating press, right? That machine, he we had these tickets, the Edmondson type ticket. I'll just take one out, right? And you dated it by pushing in the ticket into there, and you did, for a return, you turned it around with your fingers and pushed it in again, and the two ends were dated. And Edmondson was when I left Hayden Bridge after 6 months of training and went to Brampton, that's where I got the call to come here. Brampton, there was a big brass plaque up on the wall, and it told me that Edmondson had worked there, and he was the station master, and he invented the ticket, the Edmondson ticket, and the Edmondson dating press. And he had the patent for that machine, and he offered it to the railway company. And the railway company declined it free of charge, didn't want it. So he left the railway, so it's all on here, he left the railway, and he had that manufactured, and he sold one to every station in Britain, and he made an absolute fortune. And you know, and that was my predecessor, Brampton. I'm trying to claim fame here somehow or other, but he obviously a talented gentleman. And the clock, you know, behind our photographer, it's a great clock, and inside you'll see that people have carved the names of all the clerks that worked here, and I never did, you know, and I regret to this day, I'm not going to do it now, but I regret to this day that I never got my inscription inside that clock, because, you know, it's been preserved just as it was. The only thing they've done is, instead of having the station master's desk there, they've got a toilet, would you believe? So, but that was where I went in, and the glass, that door's just the same. I shut that door, boy, and that was the glass. And the telephones were on this wall, and there was, yeah. So anyway, I was going to tell the story, but I won't tell that one. But we used to pay through this window here. So when we paid out on a Friday, all the staff came here, the 50-odd staff, including 30 on the track, and the rest were all station staff. And we sold tickets through that window, and paid staff through this window. And here you have the price list of the cigarettes, etc. You know, the original price list, and they've got some great photographs. Wow.